Admiral Kale stood in the emergency meeting room on Nexus Station. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. General Thax of the Krex military, his massive frame covered in battle scars from the old war. Minister Zara from the Altarian Council, her elegant features showing worry lines. Director Knox of the Vorthak Science Division, his pale skin almost glowing under the harsh lights. "We have 36 hours left," Kale announced. "Our intelligence teams have confirmed human presence at every major coalition facility. We're looking at least 300 ships, possibly more." "How did they hide so many vessels?" General Thax demanded. His voice was deep and angry. "My warriors patrol these sectors daily." Dr. Lyra activated a holographic display showing sensor readings from the past week. "Look at this data. We've been detecting what we thought were asteroid fields, space debris, even small moons. Now we know better. The humans have technology that makes their ships look like natural objects." "Shape-shifting technology," Minister Zara said quietly. "We theorized about it during the war, but never achieved it." Director Knox studied the readings with scientific interest. "Their energy signatures change constantly. One moment a ship reads as a metal asteroid, the next as a chunk of ice. It's not just camouflage, it's active deception of our sensors." "That explains how they got so close," Kale said. "But it doesn't solve our problem. Do we fight or surrender?" "General," Thax slammed his fist on the table, "Krex warriors do not surrender to unknown threats. We fought the Zephyrian War for 30 years. We can fight these humans too." "With what?" Dr. Lyra asked. "Their ships pass through our shields like they don't exist. Our weapons can't lock onto targets that keep changing their energy signatures." "Then we adapt," Thax replied. "We always adapt." But even as the leaders debated, events across the galaxy were moving beyond their control. On the mining world of Kepler-7, Jake Morrison received new orders. The time for hiding was over. He gathered his team in the main settlement and told them the truth they had been waiting years to hear. "Remove the camouflage," he ordered. "All of it." Carol Blake and the other miners began dismantling equipment that had made their operation look simple and primitive. Underneath the fake mining gear was technology that made coalition science look like stone tools. "How long do we have?" Carol asked, as she revealed a communication array that could reach across the galaxy in seconds. "The Admiral wants real time. Intelligence on coalition fleet movements," Jake replied. "We're no longer observers. We're active participants." Within hours, what had appeared to be a small mining colony transformed into a military intelligence base. Hidden bunkers emerged from underground. Defensive systems that had been disguised as rock formations came online. Most importantly, a landing pad designed for human ships became visible for the first time in 8 years. Similar transformations happened on dozens of worlds throughout coalition space. What the aliens had thought were trader outposts, research stations, and refugee settlements revealed themselves as human military installations. Commander Rick Santos led the most dangerous mission of the operation. His team had to infiltrate Nexus Station itself, not by fighting their way in, but by walking through the front door. "Remember," Rick told his 5-person team as they prepared to dock with the station, "we're traders from the Outer Rim. We've been selling mining equipment to the Coalition for 2 years. Our papers are perfect because we actually have been doing business here." The team looked human because they were human, but their ship's records showed them as members of a previously unknown species called the Terrians. The false identity had taken 3 years to establish, including real trade missions and documented business relationships. "Sandra, you handle the customs inspection," Rick continued. "Tony, monitor station security. Maria, keep watch for any signs our cover is blown. Pete and Danny, you're with me heading to the intelligence target." Their mission was simple but crucial. While the coalition leaders debated how to respond to humanity's ultimatum, Rick's team would plant listening devices in every important meeting room on the station. The docking procedure went smoothly. Station security barely glanced at their identification cards. After 2 years of regular visits, the team was considered harmless and routine. Customs inspection complete, the Vorthak officer said without interest. Bay 7 is available for your cargo transfer. Thank you, Sandra replied in perfect Coalition standard. We should be finished loading by tomorrow morning. As the team split up to accomplish their mission, Rick reflected on how easy this was. The Coalition had grown careless during their years of peace. Security was relaxed. Guards were friendly and trusting. No one expected deception because no one had practiced it for 5 years. Meanwhile, Admiral Kale was discovering just how thoroughly humanity had studied them. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Vex reported from his station, we're receiving detailed intelligence reports about our own fleet movements. Someone is telling us where our ships are located. What do you mean? The humans are broadcasting information about Coalition fleet positions, weapon capabilities, and defensive strategies. They know things about our military that even some of our own officers don't know. Dr. Lyra looked at the data streaming across her screen. This is impossible. They have detailed analysis of weapons systems that are classified at the highest levels. They know the exact specifications of ships that were built in secret. How could they know our defensive strategies? Kyle asked. Because, came a new voice from the communication system, we've been watching you practice them. Captain Hayes appeared on the main screen, but this time she was not speaking from her ship. She was standing in what looked like a command center, filled with Coalition ship designs and battle plans. Admiral Kale, you're looking at 50 years of human intelligence gathering. Every battle you fought in the Zephyrian War, every peace negotiation, every military exercise since the treaty was signed, we have recordings, analysis, and predictive models for how your forces respond to every possible threat. General Thax's image appeared on a secondary screen from his ship. You spy on us like cowards. True warriors fight with honor. General Thax, Captain Hayes replied calmly. True warriors win. Honor is what the losing side talks about while they die. She gestured to the displays around her. Your people fight like you evolved on garden worlds where resources were plentiful. And cooperation meant survival. Every one of your battle strategies assumes your enemy will follow rules, show mercy, and limit their attacks to military targets. That's how civilized species conduct warfare, Minister Zara said, her image joining the conversation. Minister Zara, you're about to learn what uncivilized warfare looks like. Humans evolved on a world where everything tried to kill us. We learned that survival means using every advantage, breaking every rule, and showing no mercy until the enemy surrenders completely. Director Knox leaned forward with scientific curiosity. What exactly are you planning to do? We're going to demonstrate why peace only lasts when one side is too strong to challenge. You've had 5 years to enjoy equality among your species. Now you'll learn what it means to live under human protection. The transmission ended, but within minutes, reports began flooding in from across Coalition space. Human ships were not attacking military targets. Instead, they were shutting down trade routes. Fuel shipments stopped moving. Food convoys were intercepted and redirected. Communication networks went dark between major systems. They're not trying to destroy us, Dr. Lyra realized. They're trying to make us helpless. Worse than that, Admiral Kale said quietly. They're showing us that we were never really in control of our own civilization. They can turn off our entire society like flipping a switch. On his ship, General Thax watched his proud warrior fleet sitting motionless in space. Every time his ships tried to move toward human positions, their fuel systems mysteriously malfunctioned. When his engineers tried to fix the problems, they discovered computer viruses that had been hidden in their systems for years. The humans had not just been watching the Coalition. They had been preparing to control it. Sir, Rick Santos reported from inside Nexus Station, listening devices are in place. We have audio access to every major command center and meeting room. Excellent work, Captain Hayes replied. Now comes the interesting part. Let's see how they react when they realize we've been inside their most secure facility all along. The coalition was about to learn that the war they faced was unlike anything they had ever imagined. Humans did not just fight with ships and weapons. They fought with information, psychology, and the complete destruction of their enemy's will to resist. The fifth day arrived with a sense of ending. Vexahai, Kretok, Humdar, and Zilara had spent 4 days watching human warfare footage. They had seen things that challenged everything they believed about civilized behavior. Today they would present their findings to the Academy leadership. But first, Commander Noltek had arranged something unexpected. He called them to his office for what they thought would be a final briefing. Instead, they found 2 humans waiting there. The humans looked smaller than expected. After days of watching superhuman warriors on video, the cadets had imagined humans to be giants. But Commander Elena Rodriguez was average height with calm brown eyes. Major Jake Thompson was even shorter, with an easy smile that seemed out of place after everything they had seen. "Sit down, all of you," Commander Noltek said. "I want you to meet our human liaison officers. They have volunteered to answer any questions you might have before your presentation." The 4 cadets took their seats nervously. Vexahai stared at Commander Rodriguez, trying to reconcile this peaceful-looking person with the warriors he had watched for days. Kretok kept his distance from both humans, his scales showing obvious fear. Humdar seemed confused by how normal they appeared. Zilara barely glowed at all, her light patterns dim with anxiety. "We know you have been studying our military history," Commander Rodriguez said. Her voice was calm and professional. "We also know it has been disturbing for you. We are here to help you understand what you have seen." Major Thompson leaned forward in his chair. "We realize that human warfare looks brutal to other species. We understand why you might be afraid of us." "Afraid is not strong enough," Kretok said quietly. "What we saw was terrifying. Humans fight like they want to die." Commander Rodriguez nodded. "I understand why it looks that way. But we do not fight because we want to die. We fight the way we do because we want our friends to live." She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the Academy grounds. "Your species evolved on worlds that were relatively safe. You had challenges, but nothing that threatened your entire civilization. Humans evolved differently." Major Thompson continued the explanation. "Earth is what we call a death world. Almost everything on our planet is trying to kill something else. The weather, the animals, the plants, even tiny organisms that you cannot see. For millions of years," Commander Rodriguez went on, "humans survived by working together. The ones who abandoned their group died. The ones who protected their group lived to have children. Over time, we became a species that cannot survive alone." Vexahai found his voice. "But the violence we saw, the willingness to die for objectives, that seem meaningless." "Nothing is meaningless if it protects the group," Major Thompson replied. "Humans learned that sometimes one person must die so that many can live. It became part of our nature." Commander Rodriguez returned to her seat. "The footage you watched was selected to show our maximum combat capability. But those same soldiers who looked so terrifying also shared their food with hungry civilians. They risked their lives to save wounded enemies. They rebuilt, destroyed cities after the fighting ended. We have seen evidence of this," Zilara said softly. "But why do you fight so hard in the first place?" "Because we learned that if you do not fight hard enough, everyone dies," Major Thompson explained. "On Earth, predators do not stop when you ask nicely. Natural disasters do not pause for negotiations. Disease does not care about your diplomatic immunity." Commander Rodriguez pulled out a small device and projected images in the air above the table. "Let me show you something that was not in your military files." The images showed human children playing together in groups. They shared toys and protected each other from bullies. Even at a young age, humans formed tight social bonds that they defended fiercely. See how they automatically include everyone? She pointed out. The larger children protect the smaller ones. They share resources without being told. This is natural human behavior. More images appeared. Human families caring for elderly relatives, communities coming together to help neighbors during disasters, strangers risking their lives to save people they had never met. Humans do not just form bonds with their biological families, Major Thompson explained. We form bonds with anyone who becomes part of our group. Once you are family to us, we will protect you the same way we protect our children. Kreetak's scales began to shift toward a more normal color. So the extreme violence we saw was really extreme protection? Exactly, Commander Rodriguez confirmed. The same instincts that make us seem dangerous to enemies make us incredibly loyal to friends. Humdar spoke up. But surely this makes you unstable. How can the coalition trust allies who cannot control their protective instincts? Major Thompson smiled. That is why we work in mixed units. Coalition officers help us focus our protective instincts appropriately. We provide security, and you provide wisdom about when security is needed. Commander Nolthek joined the conversation. This is why I arranged this meeting. You needed to understand that human aggression is not random. It is protective. The psychological profiles you read were accurate, Commander Rodriguez continued. We do become emotionally attached to our allies, but this is an advantage, not a weakness. You will never have to wonder if human forces will abandon you in battle. Vexhai was beginning to understand. So when humans prepare for war against potential enemies, they are really preparing to protect potential friends? Yes, Major Thompson nodded. We studied coalition species not because we wanted to fight you, but because we wanted to know how to protect you effectively. Commander Rodriguez activated another projection. This one showed recent footage that had not been in their research files. Human and coalition forces working together on peacekeeping missions. The humans looked different when they fought alongside allies, calmer, more controlled, but still incredibly effective. Watch this, she said, pointing to a scene where human soldiers rescued coalition personnel from a crashed transport. See how carefully they handle the injured Zentari? They know exactly how much pressure Zentari crystal bones can withstand. 3. Footage showed human medic Patricia Lee treating wounded Slaxy civilians. She had learned to work with their unique biology. Human engineer Steve Johnson was rebuilding Ursoni settlements, adapting human construction techniques to accommodate Ursoni needs. You studied our history to understand how we fight, Major Thompson said, but you also need to understand how we protect. More footage appeared. Human forces defending coalition colonies from raiders. The humans fought with the same intensity they had shown in the historical videos, but now it was clearly protective rather than aggressive. They were defending families that had adopted them. The Mars training incident that frightened you so much, Commander Rodriguez explained, happened because our soldiers thought you were really in danger. When humans believe their allies are threatened, we cannot pretend it is just an exercise. Zilara's light patterns began to brighten. So, you become dangerous when you think we are in danger? Yes, Major Thompson confirmed, but only to whatever is threatening you. We would never hurt coalition forces intentionally. Commander Nolthek stood up. This has been your real test. Not just analyzing human military capability, but learning to see past the surface to understand the heart of a species. Vexhai realized what the commander meant. You wanted us to be afraid first, so we would understand the power of having humans as allies rather than enemies. Exactly, Commander Nolthek replied. Fear teaches respect, but understanding teaches trust. The meeting continued for another hour. The human officers answered every question patiently. They explained human behavior with simple honesty. By the end, the 4 cadets had a completely different perspective on everything they had witnessed. So what will you recommend to the Academy leadership? Commander Rodriguez asked as the meeting ended. Vexhai looked at his teammates. They all nodded agreement. We will recommend full integration of human forces into coalition military operations, with the understanding that human units must always serve alongside coalition allies. We will also recommend, Kretok added, that coalition officers learn to recognize when humans are in protective mode, so we can help channel that energy effectively. Humdar nodded. And we will suggest that human forces be deployed wherever the coalition needs maximum defensive capability. Zilara's light patterns pulsed with new confidence. Most importantly, we will recommend that other species spend time with humans before judging them. Understanding requires personal contact. Major Thompson smiled. That sounds like a good plan. 6 months later, HFY served aboard a coalition vessel with a human security detachment. When space pirates attacked, he watched Lieutenant Sarah, Parker, and Sergeant Tom Mitchell defend their alien crewmates with the same fierce determination he had seen in the footage. But now, instead of being afraid, HFY felt grateful. He realized that humans might be the only species in the galaxy capable of matching coalition ideals of protecting the innocent with the practical ability to actually do it. As he wrote his final report, HFY concluded that humans were indeed the most dangerous species in the coalition, dangerous to anyone who threatened their friends, and that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The lights of Nexus Station twinkled like stars against the dark space around it. Admiral Kale stood at the observation deck, watching ships come and go from the massive station. His blue skin reflected the soft glow from the control panels behind him. It had been 5 years since the last battle. 5 years of peace. Beautiful sight, isn't it? Dr. Lyra walked up beside him. Her tall, thin frame made Kale look short, even though he was large for his people. The Altarian scientist carried a datapad in her 4-fingered hands. Yes, Kyle replied. I never thought I would see Krex and Vorthak ships docking at the same station without firing at each other. The Zephyrian War had lasted 30 years. 3 star systems had been destroyed. Billions had died. The Krex warriors had fought with their giant battle cruisers. The Vorthak had used their advanced technology to build planet-killing weapons. The Altarians had tried to make peace between them, but failed for decades. Then something changed. The leaders of all 3 races got tired of death. They signed the Galactic Peace Treaty at this very station. Now, instead of making weapons, they traded goods. Instead of planning attacks, they shared technology. The morning reports show increased trade activity, Lyra said, handing him the data pad. Food shipments from Altair Prime are up 20%. The Krex mining operations are producing more metals than ever. Even the Vorthak are sharing some of their medical technology. Kale nodded as he read the numbers. The council meeting yesterday went well, too. No arguments about territory borders, no complaints about trade routes. It feels too good to be true. Maybe we've finally learned our lesson, Lyra said. Maybe war really is behind us now. On the far edge of known space, automated monitoring. Stations floated silently in the void. These stations had been placed there during the war to watch for enemy movements. Now they served as early warning systems for pirates or asteroid threats. Station Monitor 7 detected something unusual. Energy readings unlike anything in its database appeared at the very edge of its sensors. The computer tried to identify the source, but could not match it to any known ship design or natural phenomenon. The station's AI sent a routine report to Dr. Lyra's research team. The message was classified as low priority and buried among hundreds of other daily reports about cosmic radiation, solar flares, and space debris. Dr. Lyra would not read it for another 3 days. Far away from the peaceful corridors of Nexus Station, on a small rocky planet called Kepler 7, Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead. The mining operation was hard work, but it kept him and his team busy. The human settlement here was small, only about 200 people. Another good day, said his assistant, Carol Blake. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and strong arms from years of physical labor. The mineral extraction is ahead of schedule. Jake nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. His people had been on this planet for 8 years now. They had told the Galactic Coalition that they were simple miners from a distant system. They had papers that said they were refugees from a destroyed world. All of it was lies. "Jake, you've got that look again," Carol said. "What's bothering you?" "Nothing," he replied quickly. "Just thinking about tomorrow's work schedule." But Jake was not thinking about mining. He was thinking about the encrypted message he had received that morning, the message that had been transmitted using technology far beyond what the Coalition knew existed, the message that meant everything was about to change. The communication device hidden in his quarters looked like a simple rock, but when activated with the right frequency, it could reach Earth instantly across thousands of light years. No Coalition scientist believed such technology was possible. The message had been short. Phase 1 complete. Initiate contact protocols. Authorization, Sierra 7 Alpha. Jake had memorized those words and then destroyed the message. He had trained for this moment for 15 years, but now that it was here, he felt nervous. On Earth, General Ryan Carter stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Holographic displays showed star maps covering half the galaxy. Red dots marked Coalition military bases. Blue dots showed trade routes. Green dots indicated human observation posts. There were a lot of green dots. "Status report," Carter said to his staff. "All surveillance teams report ready," replied Colonel Susan Davis. She was a thin woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "We have full intelligence on Coalition fleet movements, defense capabilities, and command structures. Estimated response time if they detect our activities. Based on their previous reactions to unknown threats, approximately 72 hours for mobilization of their main fleet," Davis answered. "But, sir, they have no idea we exist. Our stealth technology is at least 50 years ahead of their detection systems." Carter nodded. For decades, humanity had watched the Galactic Coalition fight their war. Human ships, invisible to Coalition sensors, had observed every battle. Human agents, altered to look like Coalition species, had walked among them and learned their secrets. The Coalition thought they were alone in their part of the galaxy. They had no idea that humanity had been studying them like specimens in a laboratory. "Begin the next phase," Carter ordered. "Send the signal to Captain Hayes. It's time to introduce ourselves." Back on Nexus Station, Admiral Kale was enjoying a quiet dinner with Dr. Lyra and Commander Zex, a Krex warrior who now served as head of station security. The three had become friends during the peace years. "I got the strangest report today," Lyra said between bites of her meal. "One of our monitoring stations detected some unusual energy signatures at the edge of our sensor range." "Pirates?" Zex asked. The Krex had dark green skin and tusks that showed when he spoke. "No, the pattern was all wrong for any ship we know about. Probably just a solar storm or something natural. I'll have my team look into it tomorrow." "The universe still has mysteries," Kyle said. "It's good to know we haven't discovered everything yet." "Speaking of mysteries," Zex said, "there have been some strange reports from the outer colonies. People seeing ships that don't match any design in our databases. But when security teams investigate, they find nothing." "Ghost stories," Lyra laughed. "Peace makes people's imaginations run wild. If only they knew that in 12 hours, a ship would appear in their space that would make them question everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. If only they knew that the war they thought was over was about to begin again, with an enemy they had never imagined existed. The peace was about to end, and humanity was about to announce its presence to the galaxy. The third day arrived with a sense of dread hanging over the four cadets. Vex-High had barely touched his crystal nutrient solution at breakfast. Kreetok kept his scales a dull brown color, trying to hide his emotions. Humdar moved like he was carrying a great weight on his shoulders. Zilara had dimmed her light patterns so much, She was almost invisible. They gathered in the viewing chamber again, hoping desperately that modern human warfare would prove more civilized. Surely an advanced species would evolve beyond the brutal tactics they had witnessed from earlier periods. "Let us examine their recent conflicts," HFY said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "This file is labeled Vietnam War. It occurred only decades ago by human standards. The chamber transformed around them. Dense jungle surrounded them on all sides. The air was thick and humid. Strange sounds came from the vegetation. The cadets found themselves watching human soldiers move carefully through the green maze. These humans looked different from the earlier footage. Their equipment was more advanced. Their weapons were more sophisticated. Their uniforms were better designed. Surely their tactics would be more reasonable. They were wrong. The first thing they noticed was how the humans adapted to an environment that would kill most coalition species. The heat and humidity were beyond what Zentari could endure. The insects carried diseases that would devastate Slaxy biology. The terrain was too difficult for Ursoni to navigate easily. Even Villani would struggle to fly in such dense vegetation. Yet humans thrived in these conditions. They moved through the jungle like they belonged there. They learned to use the environment as a weapon. They became invisible when they needed to hide and deadly when they needed to fight. "Look at this soldier," Kretok pointed to a human moving through the undergrowth. "Ben Carter. He has been in the jungle for 6 months according to his file. He should be sick, weak, dying. Instead, he looks stronger than when he arrived." They watched Ben Carter lead his team on what the humans called a long-range patrol. For weeks, they moved through enemy territory with minimal supplies. They ate whatever they could find. They slept in conditions that would break most species' minds. They fought brief, violent battles and then disappeared back into the jungle. "This is impossible," Humdar muttered. "My people are strong, but we need proper food, clean water, safe shelter. These humans survive on almost nothing." The patrol included soldiers named Rachel Kim and Tony Rodriguez. When Tony was wounded by an enemy trap, the team did not call for evacuation. Instead, Rachel performed surgery using basic field equipment while Ben and the others provided security. They saved Tony's life in conditions that would challenge a full coalition medical facility. "They are performing advanced medical procedures in a combat zone," Zilara observed with amazement. "My people are healers, but we require sterile environments and proper equipment." But what disturbed the cadets most was watching human psychological adaptation. The soldiers dealt with constant stress, fear, and violence. Instead of breaking down, they seemed to become harder. They developed a dark sense of humor about death and danger. They formed bonds with their teammates that appeared stronger than family ties in most species. The footage showed scenes that made no sense to coalition military doctrine. Humans would risk entire missions to recover the body of a dead teammate. They would endure weeks of additional danger just to bring home remains that had no strategic value. "The body is already dead," HFY said in confusion. "Why do they risk living soldiers for dead tissue?" They watched more recent conflicts. Desert warfare, where humans fought in temperatures that would cook most coalition species alive. Urban combat in destroyed cities where they moved through rubble and ruins like deadly shadows. Mountain warfare at altitudes where most species could not even breathe. In every environment, humans not only survived, but excelled. They turned harsh conditions into advantages. They used terrain that would defeat other species as their ally. The cadets observed footage from Afghanistan, where human special forces operated for months behind enemy lines. A unit led by Sergeant Maria Santos and Corporal Alex Chen moved through mountain valleys, where the air was too thin for most species to function. They carried equipment loads that would crush smaller beings. They fought at altitudes where Zentari crystal lungs would fail and Slaxy scales would crack from cold. "How are they still functioning?" Kretok asked in wonder. "The atmospheric pressure alone should incapacitate them. But the humans did more than function. They dominated their environment. They moved across terrain that defeated armies. They struck targets that seemed impossible to reach. They accomplished missions that coalition planners would have declared impossible. More disturbing was their ability to improvise. When their plans failed, humans created new ones instantly. When their equipment broke, they built replacements from scraps. When their situations became hopeless, they found ways to turn disaster into victory. The cadets watched urban warfare footage where humans cleared enemy-held buildings room by room. The techniques they used violated every principle of safe military engagement. They moved through kill zones that should have been death traps. They assaulted positions that any reasonable force would avoid, yet they succeeded. Again and again, they accomplished objectives that seemed impossible, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through sheer determination and adaptability. They fight like the universe is trying to kill them, Humdar observed, like they expect everything to go wrong and plan accordingly. The footage showed human soldiers like Private Katie Johnson continuing to fight effectively even after being wounded multiple times. Coalition soldiers would be evacuated after a single serious injury. Humans seem to consider injury just another obstacle to overcome. They watched Sergeant Mark Torres lead his squad through a minefield to rescue trapped civilians. When his leg was damaged by an explosion, he continued the mission using improvised support. When his weapon was destroyed, he picked up an enemy rifle and kept fighting. His pain tolerance is beyond measurement, Zilara said softly. Any of our species would be unconscious from shock, but pain tolerance was just the beginning. The cadets discovered that humans possessed endurance capabilities that exceeded even Ursoni stamina. They watched footage of human soldiers marching for days without rest, running for hours while carrying heavy equipment, fighting for extended periods that would exhaust any coalition species. A video file showed human athletes competing in something called an ultramarathon. Runners like Sam Peterson and Laura Miller covered distances that took them over 24 hours to complete. They did this for recreation, not military necessity. They run for pleasure, Kretok said in disbelief. They inflict this suffering on themselves voluntarily. The research files revealed that humans were among the few species in the galaxy capable of persistence hunting. They could literally run prey animals to death through pure endurance. Most coalition species were built for short bursts of activity. Humans seemed designed for endless grinding effort. As the day progressed, the cadets realized they were not just studying different military tactics. They were observing a fundamentally different type of being. Humans seemed to thrive under conditions that would destroy other species. They grew stronger under pressure that would break coalition forces. They are not just aggressive, Vexhai said slowly. They are resilient beyond anything we have seen. They adapt to environments that should kill them. They overcome obstacles that should stop them. The final footage of the day showed human peacekeeping operations in recent conflicts. Even their attempts at peace involved more violence than most species used in actual war. But the results were undeniable. Human peacekeepers ended conflicts faster and more permanently than coalition forces. They watched footage of human engineers rebuilding destroyed infrastructure while under enemy fire. Medical teams treating civilians in active combat zones. Soldiers distributing food while fighting off attackers. They protect civilians by destroying threats, Humdar observed. They create peace through overwhelming force. As the viewing session ended, the four cadets sat in stunned silence. What they had discovered was worse than they had imagined. Humans were not just unusually aggressive, they were incredibly capable. They possessed abilities that made them dangerous beyond any species the Coalition had encountered. Kretok was the first to speak. What if they decide we are enemies? How could we fight beings like this? Zilara's light patterns flickered with fear. Maybe we should recommend that humans not be integrated into Coalition forces. Maybe they are too dangerous to trust. Vexhai stared at the blank walls of the viewing chamber. Tomorrow they would see more. But he already suspected that the worst was yet to come. If modern humans were this capable, what would their most recent conflicts reveal? None of them slept well that night. They all had the same terrifying thought. They were not studying potential allies. They were studying the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The next morning, the 4 cadets returned to the viewing chamber with heavy hearts. None of them had slept well. Images of the ruined city and fighting humans had filled their dreams. HFY arrived first, his crystal skin dimmer than usual. The others followed quietly, each lost in their own thoughts. Maybe yesterday was just one bad example, Kretok said hopefully. His scales were a nervous yellow color. Surely they have normal battles too. Zilara settled onto her floating cushion. Her light patterns were subdued, barely glowing. I keep thinking about that wounded soldier, Jake Morrison. He could barely walk, but he kept fighting. Hamdar nodded slowly. In my culture, injured warriors rest while healthy ones continue the battle. It makes sense. Why risk more lives for someone who cannot fight effectively? HFY activated the viewing system again. The human military files appeared around them. So many conflicts, so many wars. Let us try something different. This says Battle of Normandy. It appears to be from the same war, but a different location. The room changed again. They found themselves looking at a beach covered with obstacles and defensive positions. The water beyond was filled with boats carrying human soldiers. The cadets watched as the boats approached the shore under heavy enemy fire. They are attacking. A fortified position directly, HFY observed. Any military academy teaches this is poor strategy. They should find another approach. But the humans did not look for another approach. They drove their boats straight at the beach. When the boats reached shallow water, the soldiers jumped out and ran toward the fortified positions. Many fell immediately. Others kept running. Kretok watched a human medic named Danny Foster run directly into the line of fire to reach a wounded soldier. He is not even armed, Kretok whispered. Why would he risk his life for someone who might already be dead? The medic reached the wounded man and began treating his injuries while bullets flew overhead. Other soldiers provided covering fire, risking their own lives to protect the medic and the wounded man. This is insane, Hamdar said. His fur was standing on end, a sign of extreme agitation among his people. They are multiplying casualties instead of minimizing them. But the humans kept coming. Wave after wave of soldiers ran up the beach. When one fell, another took his place. They climbed over the bodies of their dead comrades to reach the enemy positions. It took hours, but eventually they overwhelmed the defenders through sheer determination and numbers. Zilara was shaking. Her species found violence disturbing under any circumstances, but this level of carnage was beyond her comprehension. How many died for that beach? Thousands. For what purpose? HFY checked the tactical analysis. According to this, the beach was strategically important for their larger invasion plan. But the cost... He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. They watched more footage from the same war, a battle in the Pacific Ocean where human pilots deliberately crashed their planes into enemy ships. The cadets observed in horror as pilot Rick Stone aimed his damaged aircraft at an enemy vessel rather than try to land safely. He killed himself on purpose, Kretok said in disbelief. His scales had turned an unhealthy gray color. His plane was damaged, but he could have tried to escape. Another pilot, Amy Brooks, followed the same pattern. Her plane was hit by enemy fire, but instead of retreating, she dove straight into an enemy ship. The explosion destroyed both the plane and the ship. They call it kamikaze, HFY read, from the data files. It means divine wind. They consider it honorable to die this way. Hamdar stood up abruptly and walked to the far side of the chamber. I cannot watch this anymore. In my culture, we value individual life above military objectives. A warrior who throws away his life carelessly is considered a failure. But Zilara forced herself to keep watching, even though it made her physically ill. "Look at their faces," she said quietly. "They are not insane. They are calm, determined. They believe this is the right thing to do." The footage continued. Human soldiers in jungle warfare, fighting an enemy they could barely see. Urban combat where they moved from building to building, room by room, never knowing what waited around each corner. Desert battles where they fought in temperatures that would kill most coalition species. In every scenario, the humans displayed the same disturbing pattern. They fought harder when things got worse. They took bigger risks when the stakes were higher. They never seemed to reach a point where they decided the cost was too high. Kretok found footage of a human female soldier named Kelly Wright. She was part of a unit that got separated from their main force. When one of her teammates was wounded, she carried him for miles through enemy territory. The wounded soldier was larger than she was, but she refused to leave him behind. She could move much faster without him, Kretok observed. She could escape and get help. Instead, she risks both their lives. They watched Kelly struggle through forests and across rivers, carrying her injured comrade. She went without food and water to give her teammate what little she had. When enemy soldiers got close, she fought them off while protecting the wounded. "Man, she made it," Zilara said with surprise when the footage ended. "Both of them survived. But statistically, she should not have," Vexhai pointed out. "Her chances would have been much better alone. Her decision was mathematically irrational." Hamdar returned to his seat. "Perhaps that is what we do not understand. They do not think like us. They do not calculate odds the way we do." The cadets spent the rest of the day watching human conflicts from different time periods. Ancient battles with swords and shields, medieval sieges that lasted for months, more recent wars with advanced weapons. In every case, humans displayed the same incomprehensible behavior. They watched footage of human soldiers defending a position called the Alamo. The defenders knew they would probably die, but they fought anyway. They could have retreated, but they chose to stay and fight against impossible odds. "They all died," Kretok said softly. "Every single one of them. What did they accomplish?" Vexhai studied the historical analysis. According to this, their sacrifice inspired others. Their deaths led to a larger victory later. "They died for an idea," Zilara said. "Not for territory or resources, for an abstract concept." The day's final footage showed human peacekeeping operations. Even when they were supposed to be keeping peace, humans used more force than most coalition species would use in actual war. A peacekeeping mission led by Colonel Steve Harris involved more explosions and gunfire than a typical coalition military action. "How can they call this peacekeeping?" Hamdar asked. "They are causing more violence than they are preventing." But when they looked closer, they saw the results. The humans had stopped a genocide. They had saved thousands of civilian lives. Their overwhelming use of force had ended the conflict quickly, which actually reduced total casualties. "I think I am beginning to understand," Vexhai said slowly. "They use massive force to achieve their goals quickly. They believe this reduces suffering in the long run." Kretok was not convinced. "But the risk to themselves is enormous. Any rational being would find a safer approach." "Maybe that is the point," Zilara said. "Maybe they are not rational, at least not the way we understand rationality." As the viewing session ended, the four cadets sat in troubled silence. They had expected to study the military tactics of another civilized species. Instead, they had discovered something that challenged their basic understanding of how intelligent beings should behave. "We need to see more," Vexhai said finally. "Perhaps their modern forces are different. Maybe they have evolved beyond this primitive thinking." But none of them really believed that. Deep down, they all suspected that what they had seen was not primitive human behavior. It was simply human behavior. And that thought was more frightening than any weapon they had ever studied. Kretok's scales remained gray as they left the viewing chamber. Humdar walked slower than usual. His massive shoulders slumped. Zil-Ara's light patterns were barely visible. Even Vex-High, usually confident in his ability to understand any military problem, felt shaken by what they had witnessed. Tomorrow, they would continue their research. They would delve deeper into human military history. But tonight, each of them would struggle with the same disturbing question. What kind of species values abstract ideals more than individual survival? And, more importantly, what did that mean for the coalition?